I figured out the system. I utilized diversity programs like the EOP program. And, I was a ward of the state. So that helped me with financial aid. And I worked 3 jobs and went to school full time. And my mother took ill, at 21. I got custody of my little brother for a really short period of time. And then he passed away. And then my mother passed away. And honestly, that's when I blossomed. It was like all the things that were tying me down as a kid, I was able to channel it into a particular way that helped me grow.
This is the One Girl Revolution podcast, a podcast that highlights the stories of world-changing women and girls across the country. We hope that these stories inspire you, but even more so, we hope that these stories help you to see your own value, your purpose, and your power to change the world through your life. Every woman and girl is a One Girl Revolution. This week on the One Girl Revolution podcast, we welcome Jacqui Pitman. Jacqui is a CEO, an executive producer, a content creator, a motivational speaker. She's been the casting director for The Golden Bachelor and now The Golden Bachelorette and so many other shows that you'll be familiar with. She is an incredible woman in so many ways. But the reason I wanted to have her on this podcast is she is an incredible activist for children in the foster care system, including those aging out at 18. Jacqui herself grew up in the foster care system, as she shares in this episode. She was in and out of foster care from the ages of 7 to 18. She shares her story of why and the struggles her parents faced, which I think is so important for us to hear about because there are so many misconceptions about foster care and children in the foster care system. And the reality is all human beings have human problems, and some people just can't care for their kids in the way that their children deserve. Jacqui makes me cry at the end of this episode talking about her mama too. The love and admiration that she has for her mom really touched my heart, and I know that it'll touch you as well. Jacqui moved out to California at the age of 18 and worked incredibly hard, took chances and opportunities that presented themselves, and she ended up building an incredible career in the entertainment industry. And now at 62 years young, she still has a thriving career and loves what she does, which she shares a lot about in this episode. Jacqui's own experiences, though, have fueled her passion for advocacy and led her to spearhead annual drives to raise funds and gift cards for children within the foster care system. Jacqui is now preparing to launch a nonprofit organization dedicated to supporting children in the foster care system and beyond, called Marvin Cares for Kids. Marvin Cares for Kids is named in honor of her late brother Marvin, who tragically passed away from a fatal asthma attack at the age of 14. This organization seeks to provide guidance, resources, and opportunities to foster youth, empowering them to realize their full potential. I am so honored and excited to introduce you to Jacqui and her incredible story. Here's my conversation with Jacqui. Jacqui, welcome to the One Girl Revolution podcast.
Hello. Thank you for having me today.
Oh my gosh, I'm so excited to have you on. You are such a dynamic woman and a multifaceted powerhouse in the entertainment industry. You serve as the CEO of PartyPit Productions, which I want to talk about. You're the visionary behind Pitman Casting. So many different things, that you've done throughout the years. You've worked on so many different shows, which I want to talk about your career. But the reason that I really wanted to have you on this podcast is to talk about your incredible work with children navigating the foster care system, which you yourself did a good part of the first part of your early life. And so before we get into all the other things that I want to talk to you about, I would love for you to rewind. And you yourself navigated the foster care system from the ages of 7 to 18. Yeah. And I would love for you to share just a little bit about your early life and what that experience was like navigating the foster care system for you.
Ooh, that takes me back, a good 50 years. So let's see. My mom was a beautiful spirit. Unfortunately, she had mental illness that no one really knew about. She was schizophrenic. And couple that with alcoholism. So those two things don't go hand in hand. And when they're not diagnosed, it could be quite explosive. So my mother was married and she had 3 kids. She divorced and then she had me. And she had my little brother who was like 11 years younger than me. We had the same dad. Unfortunately, he was someone else's husband. So that was a little tough as a little one, but my dad was always there. I always knew who he was. And my siblings from my father's marriage are my siblings, and we're very close. So now all of this as years have, come between us. But so as a little girl with my mother's mental illness, it was a toxic, hostile environment to raise me. And I was the only one left because my mother was married and her ex-husband got custody of my siblings. So at 7, I was taken away. And in that period of time, I went in and out of 5 different foster homes. And I lived with my aunt also, which was my mom's sister. And we tried that for a little while and that didn't work. So finally at 12 years old, bouncing back and forth at 12, I was living with my mom for the summer. Wasn't working out very well. My little brother was alive then. He was only like a year old. And I decided I didn't want to do it anymore. I didn't want to do the bouncing back and forth. I wanted stability. So I called the foster care system to come get me because I had been in the system already and they thought things were working perfectly fine with me and my mom, and they weren't. And it just hit me. I was like, this is not the life I want at 12. So I called the foster care system. They came and got me, and I landed in my 5th foster home, my last foster home. And it was, it was trying probably for everybody. I was the very first foster kid in that family. And they had 4 of their own kids. But the amazing thing was it was in a fantastic town. I landed into a fantastic family who embraced me as well as they could. The mom and dad totally embraced me. The kids were like, who is this? Why is she here? But it was interesting. And they came from a very wealthy family of 13 on both sides. You know what I mean? So they had I had cousins coming out of the woodwork, to embrace me as a new family member. So that's where I spent most of my time from 12 to 18. I went to a wonderful high school that prepared me for the world because it was full of diversity, not diversity black and white. I mean, I think my whole school was 8% minority, which included Black people, Puerto Rican people, Asian people. We were all in that 8%, and the rest was, white, but it was, Jewish and Irish Catholic and Italian. And, it was just a rich culture of diversity. And I was an overachiever. I excelled at nothing, but I participated in everything because I just wanted to embrace life. So I played basketball. I was a starting pitcher in freshman year of high school on the varsity team. That was my best year. I was in the plays. I was in the marching band. I played 4 instruments. I was on a speech and debate, student council. I did everything that prepared me for life. And when 18 hit, I had a decision to make because it was quite frightening being a foster kid aging out of the system. I remember my senior year, I would cry in class every day because I didn't know what was going to happen when I turned 18. You don't know. Nowadays, the foster care system is better. It's not great, but it's better on kids aging out. They have gap years now. So they kind of carry you through 21 or something like that. But when I was in school, when I was growing up, it ended at 18. And that little $134 a month that they were paying foster families. So for people who are like, they want the money, there is no money. There really isn't any money. If you're lucky, you get a foster family who embraces you on all aspects of life. And that includes also taking care of you financially, because $134 for a kid for a month is not enough for anything, right? So, at 18, my sister, my natural sister, my mother's oldest daughter, had moved to California. And I grew up in New Jersey. So all this stuff was happening to me in New Jersey. My mother had moved out to California, my natural mother. She brought my little brother, who was 11 years younger than me, and we all moved in with my sister. And I, at 18, packed everything I owned, which was only like $127. And I put it all in a box, which was like a TV box. And I moved to California. I remember all my peer advisors in school, my teachers all saying, Jacqui, you're never going to go to college. And I was like, yes, I am. You don't know me. I'm going. It was like, how do you go to college with $127 in your pocket? But I found a way, I figured out the system. I utilized diversity programs like the EOP program. And, I was a ward of the state. So that helped me with financial aid. And I worked 3 jobs and went to school full time. And my mother took ill. At 21, I got custody of my little brother for a really short period of time. And then he passed away. And then my mother passed away. And honestly, that's when I blossomed. It was like all the things that were tying me down as a kid, I was able to channel it into a particular way that helped me grow. And that's the beginning of my career.
Yeah. Well, you fought through so much. I know, throughout your early life, it's a lot for a kid to be bounced around to different foster homes and dealing with so many different dynamics alongside just being a kid and dealing with the things that kids deal with. And I know I'm so grateful for you sharing your story, because I think there are so many misconceptions and misinformation out there about children in the foster care system, and even, kids that get adopted. People have all these ideas of what it's really like, or what children in those situations are like. And the reality is it's just a normal human thing. There's so much diversity in stories. I know I've read so many stories recently, sad stories about how, the parents pass away in a car accident, and then they have 4 little kids, and there's no family to take them, or the family is elderly and can't take them. There's so many different stories out there, and it's so important and so critical for everyone to support these kids and build community around them, because I know that you found that obviously in the last foster home that you shared, just being in that community and having support systems, but kids need that.
I did. And being a foster kid emotionally follows you for the rest of your life. And if you're lucky, you're able to find that mentor, which I did. And if you find that mentor who sees all the potential and beauty in you that you haven't gotten from your parents, you know what I mean? Because that's the tough part. I mean, I think your parents are the ones who are supposed to give you your self-confidence, as a human being. And mine were sick and they weren't there. And so for that reason, it's like you look to other people. And I think some people have a tendency to look for their self-assuredness in the wrong places. And I got lucky. My whole life is built on luck. So I got lucky. I found a mentor who's fantastic, taught me everything I know about television and life and love in life. And he was like my dad, and he died 10 years ago. But you take all these little piece of nuggets, and ultimately you hope to be able to share it somewhere. And so I think why I do a little bit of the foster care stuff that I do, I could do a lot more, honestly, but it's a journey. It's sort of like, I liken it to, I can't work at an animal shelter. You know what I mean? Because I have 2 dogs. At any time I could have 3, and I could probably have 10 if it came down to it. And for me to bury myself in the foster care system, I just wouldn't get out. I would just stay there and be a mom to as many as I possibly could. So I think I do better on the outside. I can help more people that way. But I think it's, as far as the industry goes, Marvin Cares for Kids. Marvin was my little brother who passed away. And he spent a year in the foster care system, which was devastating for me. And then he passed away. And so not in the foster care system, but he passed away a little bit after. And from then, the trajectory of my life changed because while I was young, I was really looking at just trying to make his life better. Once he left, then it's like, well, what do I do? What do I do now? Because, what I was working hard for was gone. And then, in recent years, I realized I can channel that. It's really important for me. I think the entertainment industry, fights every day for diversity and inclusion. And some people look at diversity as black and white. It's not. It's not. It's one small aspect of diversity. Diversity is socioeconomic status. It's all the races. It's not just black and white. It's genders. It's disabilities. It's just full of so much. And the foster care system carries all of that. And I just feel like Marvin Cares for Kids, I have a great networking system. A lot of people know me in the industry. And I'm saying that from ego, but I've worked with so many people. And I have a good relationship with most of the networks. And if I don't, know you, I'm going to know you. So I figure, with Marvin Cares for Kids, the thing that would make me feel like I've helped as many as I possibly can is open those doors in the entertainment industry for those kids either aging out of the system like I was, who may not want to go to college, though I did, may not be able to go to college. It's not even the want or the can't. They just don't know how, they just don't know how to go to college. Like, especially now, it's money. And, if you don't have someone sitting there and mentoring you through the process and helping you fill out that paperwork and telling you can do it, most cases they won't. And so many of them end up in homeless and in the streets and stuff just because they feel they don't have anyone there, that safety net, So I just want to be able to help in that.
Yeah. Well, and what I love so much about your story, Jacqui, and I'm a firm believer that we're as unique as our fingerprint. Like you talked about diversity in so many different ways. And so if we are as unique as our fingerprint, everybody's story is unique. Everybody's perspective is unique. And we're also all in this life together. And it's so important for each and every one of us to find our thing, right? Like when you talked about not volunteering at an animal shelter, I'm the same way. I have 2 dogs. I would adopt all of them. I still look at all the animal rescues. We've had women on this podcast in animal rescue, and every single day I look at those sweet doggies and I think about getting more. But it's like, we need to know ourselves and say, okay, what are my talents? What is my time? What is my treasure, right? Like throughout our lives, we have those 3 things that kind of come and go, right? You might not be able to donate money at this time, but you might be able to give of your time or a talent. If you're a graphic designer or audio engineer, or, I love that though, that you are using your own network, your own career in a way to give back. And we all have those abilities. If we're creative and we look at what we have, we're able to help people in so many different ways.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And sometimes it just takes that one person to see you, to recognize that there's something in it, because most of the time you don't know, as a kid, you just don't. Being kids, it's not that easy.
It's not. And I feel like it's getting more difficult for kids.
Yeah.
So, okay, I want to talk. Yeah, I want to talk about Marvin Cares for Kids, but I would like to rewind and talk about your mentor and how you got into the entertainment industry. I'd love to just know that story. And then whatever you can share, I know there are so many career highlights. I was looking through all the different things that you've done, but if you could just share a little bit about some of the shows and things that you've worked on, I'd love to hear it.
Okay. Well, so I worked 3 jobs in college, and one of the jobs, I was a manager of import-export in Long Beach for a steamship line, which is so random, but it got me through school and it was my full-time job. And I would literally take, and this is the craziest thing, I would take my 2-week vacation time and cut the days in half and do studio internship time at one of the local news stations in Los Angeles. It's now KCAL. It used to be KHJ. And I was a unpaid intern there, but it was a small public affairs program. And so I did that. And so I had 20 studio days instead of 10 vacation days at work. I graduated school. And the thing I said to myself is, I'm only going to have one job for the rest of my life. I'm just going to have one job because I had been working so many jobs to get through school. I decided, and I did a lot of different internships. And I did one at CBS, which was more like a workshop internship. And then I did one for Rick Dees, the radio guy. I was his very first intern. He actually paid me a little bit sometimes. And I worked with him for a year and a half. That was fantastic at Kiss FM radio. This was back in the day when Michael Jackson was up there all the time. That was fun. I had such a great experience doing that. And then at KSJ. So I decided, and when you're in college and the radio TV program is what I majored in, they're always like, don't just send your resumes out blindly. Research, find out who you're sent, find that person that you should send your resume to. I was like, whatever, I'm sending my resume out. So I went and I looked at the back of the Hollywood Reporter back in the day, and it listed, every 2 weeks it listed every address for every production company. So I literally sent my resume out to over 200 production companies, different shows. I didn't care. It was just like, just go, get, to whom it may concern. I started getting rejection letters in the mail, and I was so excited because all I could think is, oh my God, somebody saw it. Somebody read my resume, And then I got a phone call from ABC News. And the phone call was wild for me because I was like, huh? His name is Jonathan Tenace. He was head of human resources. I remember this so vividly. And he said, I'd like to interview you. He said, I saw your resume and I was so extremely impressed by someone who just graduated college with all the work experience you had on your resume. So I was like, oh, okay. So I borrowed my friend's car because I didn't have one. And I drove his car to ABC. And I'm in there and Jonathan just fell in love with me. And he's like, oh my God. He said, we have like a news production coordinator job that's open up. It's union. And he said, I would love to interview you for it. And, because it's union, you have to take a typing test because everyone has to have bare minimum requirements. And if I'm going to hire from the outside, they have to be equal to anybody I could have promoted from the inside. So I was like, wow, all right. Well, I had never taken a typing test. I don't even think I ever used a typewriter, maybe in college. And if I did, it wasn't working right? So anyway, I take this, he gives me this typing test 3 times. And I fail all 3. I didn't even know, typing tests are serious when they tell, I didn't know any of it. And I was so embarrassed. But so he said, well, he said, I have an idea. He said, I'm going to give you a temp position. He said, I have someone leaving in 2 months. She's leaving for maternity leave. He said, and in that 2-month period of time, I want you to take a typing class. He said, and then when you come in, you'll be in a temp position until she comes back. He said, but when she comes back, you will have made so many friends and they will all love you as much as I did. So I was like, oh, I'm in. This is fantastic. I go back home and then I see a thing for a recruiter for Love Connection, the dating show. And I'd seen Love Connection and I was single and I'm out all the time now that I graduated from school. So I was like, oh, I could be a recruiter. I could recruit single people. So I called them and I went up for a job interview. And on my way home, when I got back, because that was part-time, and that meant I didn't have to leave my full-time job. I could wait, do my typing class, wait for the next 2 months before I quit my job. And when I got back home, on my machine was head of casting. And he said, we want to offer you a full-time job in our casting department. And I was horrified because then I had to make a decision,
Yeah.
And I left. I quit my job and I took a $2,000 a month pay cut. And a friend of mine gave me her car for $1. And I drove to Hollywood every day. And that was the start of my career. And I worked at Love Connection almost 3 years. Ended up being head of casting and matchmaking, all that stuff. And then that was a rough show because the executive producer was known to be a tyrant, but he loved me. And a lot of people had come and gone through that company. And a lot of my friends who I worked with and made friends with, still living in Long Beach, they took a job on a show called Studs at Fox. And it was brand new. And it was only guaranteed for 6 weeks air. Love Connection when I started, was in its 12th season. So it was a well-oiled machine. And there I went in for an interview with the executive producer, who was the guy who ended up being my mentor for the next 20 years. And he basically took me to lunch, which I thought was fantastic. An executive producer taking me to lunch. I've arrived. And he told me how much he liked me in the interview. And I got home and he told me he wasn't going to hire me. He said, I'm not going to hire you for this because I'm friends with your boss. He said, and the only way I'll hire you is if I call him and ask him if I can hire you. Now, mind you, half the staff had already gone to work over there. And I was the last of the Mohicans or whatever. And I was just like, oh no, you can't do that. That's horrifying. And he did. He called the boss and he said, and they were at odds with each other because this was a competitive show. And I'm his head of casting. And so my boss at Love Connection had a bit of an ego. And he said, look, if anybody's stupid enough to leave a show that's been on the air for 12 seasons to go to a show that's only guaranteed for 6 weeks, let them. And then my new boss said, so you're okay if Jacqui goes? He's like, what? She doesn't want to leave. So I left. And that's the beginning of my relationship with my mentor. I worked with him at Studs for 2 years, and he then started his own production company. And he asked me, I would go into his office as a casting person, and I was always coming up with show ideas. And he would say, I love your enthusiasm, but they are not shows. And so then I'm like, okay. So he said, I'm starting my own production company, and I would love it if you were my first employee. Would you be my assistant? And I said, no. I said, I won't be your assistant. I said, I'm too disorganized to be anybody's assistant, to be tied to anyone's desk answering phones. I said, take the money you were going to hire me and hire an assistant. And I said, and I'll work for free. And then when we sell our first show, pay me double what I'm making here today. And he said, she's crazy, but okay.
So creative of you.
Yeah. I was making $900 a week then. And we sold our first show in 6 months, and he doubled me to $1,800. And that truly was the start of my career in development and creating TV shows. And I said, I want to know what you know. Teach me what you know. And from that moment on, when I worked with him, I was in every meeting, every phone call. I read every contract. And his name is Howard Schultz, and he was the owner of Lighthearted Entertainment. He passed away 10 years ago. And in that time, he was the executive producer and creator of the original Extreme Makeover with the plastic surgery. I developed it, and I was his co-EP. I created Next, the dating show for MTV. We both executive produced it together. We did a myriad of other shows. The great thing about that was we come up with something in our brain, we put it on a piece of paper, we pitch it, we sell it, we produce it, we take it through post, we produce it in studio. And so that was where I cut my teeth on television production. And when I left that company on my own, which was about 2006, I then started creating and developing stuff myself. And my casting company, Pitman Casting, came out of the economy crash because everybody was unemployed. And I started back to my roots of casting and then realized I could still do both and create shows and produce. So in that period, like 5-6 years ago, I created To Rome for Love, got to live in Italy for 2 months, find single men there. Created it, my company cast it, and I got to executive produce it with Asylum Entertainment. So that was fantastic. And just recently, we have another project that I can't talk about, but it's there.
I can't wait to see. I was like going through all the different shows that you've worked on through the years. And actually The Golden Bachelor popped up to me because I was like, I loved The Golden Bachelor, and anybody who's listening is so good and so interesting. And there's so many different shows that you've worked on, and we don't often realize, like, you could pull back the curtain and be like, oh my gosh, there are actual people behind it. And so I think that, you just sharing your story and like about the work that you're doing. And also I love about your story with your mentor that there really was a humility where you were like, I just want to learn, which I think that in a lot of ways we've lost that in our culture, in our world, where people get out of college or they're in their second career and they almost demand like, oh, I deserve this. And it's like, no, we need to say like, okay, I know X, Y, and Z, but I want to learn, these other things, and really working to get to where we want to be. And that's what I see with you now, having your own production company and your own casting company. And now you have so much flexibility to choose, I'm sure, in a lot of ways, to choose the things that you work on. Watch our Emmy-nominated documentary series featuring the girl inside and in tandem on our website or on our YouTube channel today. Check out onegirlrevolution.com. That's the number onegirlrevolution.com today. And please subscribe to our YouTube channel for our documentaries, videos, and podcast episodes.
I do. I have the luxury, and it's a long list of great production companies and producers that I have worked with over the years. Long list, but somewhere at the very top, who I love. Currently, as casting director of The Golden Bachelor and The Golden Bachelorette, we're literally in our final selection stage of The Golden Bachelorette this week. So that's fun. But that show alone has really it's been life-altering for me, as well as the people we've cast on it. And I say life-altering for me because they're my peers. Everyone is over 60. I'm 62. And so I look at them and their journeys. I've been married, I've divorced, I've dated, the whole thing. I don't have children, but I have dogs and I have a stepdaughter who I love and adore. But, I listen to their journeys and I have so much empathy and compassion and relatability to some of this stuff, the guys and girls alike. I mean, the women, over 40,000 women applied for The Golden Bachelor. And we've had a huge number in the thousands for the guys who applied for The Golden Bachelorette. And, women are always like, where are all the good guys? And all I can say is they exist. The good guys do exist because we've found some great ones. The thing that I love most about working on that show is there were no losers. Everybody was a winner. Even if you applied and didn't get interviewed or did get interviewed and didn't make the show, it made people of a certain age step out of their comfort zone when so many of them kind of stopped living or thought dating and relationships was behind them. And when it was all said and done, and after, we had a marriage and all the good thing, now we got divorce coming, but all said and done, it's like all the participants couldn't wait to get back into their lives so they could participate in their life. It was sort of like, put me in, coach. So because I'm not done, I'm not done living, and it's, the butterflies still happen. And I just love working on that show. I'm so blessed to have that as a part of my career path right now. So it's beautiful.
Yeah. And it's opened up, I think, America's eyes to that too. It's given so many people hope and so many people to be like, oh, my parents are that same age and like they can find love again. Now I'm in the chapter of life where unfortunately people are starting to lose parents, or divorces happen. And it's just such a beautiful thing to see people, again, like you mentioned, kind of see this as a new chapter of life and like almost become who they're supposed to be in this next chapter. Whereas they retired and they don't have their job anymore and they don't feel fulfilled in the same way that they used to. But the reality is life is full of many chapters. And I love the show so much for that reason, because it just reminds each and every one of us that there's always hope. There are great people in the world. Those are my favorite people. And I'm sure that I know you have a lot of different types of people that get cast. There's always the villain, which I know production side of things, sometimes things get edited, but there are so many different types of people, and it should give every single person hope that there are good people out there. And it's just a matter of finding them. And it's just a matter of jumping sometimes, right? Like you shared about your own career journey. It's like, all right, is this a safe choice? Not necessarily, but I'm going to do it. And it leads to the next thing. And that's so much of life.
I have to admit and give kudos 100% to the executive producers of that show. They've been working on Bachelor for years. And if anybody was going to try to dip their toe into the golden years, it should have been them. And I think they brought so much heart to that show. It was like one of the highest rated shows in 2023, which is amazing to me. But I always tell everyone, people compliment our casting a lot. And I said, we did a good job. But as casting people, we typically have to turn over our cast to the production. And those guys took care of all those women and Gary like nobody's business. And when it was said and done, when I saw them after the tapings, they were so happy, so thankful, so gracious, and just so thrilled of the experience that they had. I was like, oh my God, you guys are like golden producers, golden executive producers. So I tip my hat to them because they were fantastic.
Yeah, they're incredible.
That's one of the parts of picking and choosing who I get to work with. They were amazing as executive producers. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I can't wait to watch The Golden Bachelorette and all the other things that you have coming up. But one thing that I'm curious about, Jacqui, because throughout you have this incredible career, you've worked on so many different shows and so many different networks, and people will look up your bio and just be blown away by all the things that you've done. But throughout all of your success, you've always had this thread that kind of went back to little Jacqui, to the things that you experienced as a little girl and going through the foster care system. And you found innovative ways throughout your career to support children in the foster care system. I know that you do annual drives to raise funds for children within the foster care system. And now, like you mentioned before, you're launching a nonprofit organization, Marvin Cares for Kids, which is incredible. Can you just talk about kind of why you have continued to do that work throughout your career, why you found these innovative ways, and then what led to you founding this nonprofit organization?
It's funny. One of my best friends, her name is Wanda. She was the very first friend I ever had at 12 years old when I moved into my fifth foster home. She lived like 5 houses down from me. And I heard her recently describe the first day we met. I didn't remember half the stuff she said, but it was really funny. But she said I was sitting on the step of my foster house, and she said I was crying. And she said, she walked up to me. She's like, why are you crying? And I introduced myself. She introduced herself. And she said, get up and come play kickball with us. So I went to the field, and that was the beginning of our friendship. She does not have children. She went to school to become a social worker, to work in the foster care system because of me. So when I started collecting gift cards every Christmas for foster kids, it brings tears to my eyes. I made sure that she was someone that I sent gift cards to so that she could share them with her kids. So that was one of the things. The other thing is I have a girlfriend who's a television producer. It's sort of like leading a horse to water. and not being able to make them drink. These women made me drink. They lead me to water and they made me drink. She called me one day, and this is where the real foster care experience started for me for Christmas. And then it made me reach out to my network of friends. And I was just amazed at how many people came forward. She called me up. She had just gotten back from a Christmas party for foster kids. And she said to me, Jacqui, she said, I just went to a Christmas party and I'm devastated. And I said, why? She said, the older kids, we didn't have anything for them for Christmas. They don't want toys. They don't want teddy bears. They don't want, she said, gift cards would be, even if it's $20 or $10, to give them something so that they can buy whatever it is they want. And I'm like, gift cards. And so she said, yeah. And I said, well, I had just done a little toy drive at my Christmas party for my company. I had everybody bring toys, right? Of course, kids' toys. And then it resonated with me because it reminded me of what it was like at Christmas time in all my foster homes, and my mother, God rest her soul, my mother's way of showing love was to buy things, to buy gifts. But due to her mental illness, she would buy it Christmas Eve and we'd open all our packages. And then Christmas night, she would destroy them all. And then she'd go buy them again. So it was like Christmas was always this weird thing for me growing up. And, and then thinking of the different homes and everybody celebrating Christmas in a different way. I never was showered with all the things that my mother would buy for me for Christmas. And we just started, I lived in a religious home. So we started looking at Christmas differently. The importance of Christmas started to resonate. So when she came to me and I said, well, look, I said, you know what? Let me post on Facebook and see if some friends will donate some gift cards to me. And in my first post, I raised over $10,000 in gift cards. No, first time it was $7,000 in gift cards and $20 gift cards. And I started getting all these gift cards, mailed to me, and I'm like, okay, all right. I said, well, we still got time that we can go and you can help distribute these gift cards to different. So we started there, and then what came $7,000 then became $10,000. Then I had one donor just give me $10,000, which became $20,000. And then, and it just started to snowball. And, I was sending my girlfriend in Atlanta, the social worker friend, $5,000 of gift cards so that she could give them to friends. And I was, calling different organizations to see if I could give them gift cards. And then what happened last year, I didn't collect last year. And that's when I decided I need to start. I decided I wanted to start my foundation before, but it really resonated with me that I need to start my own nonprofit because I had $3,000 in $20 gift cards. And I had $5,000 in cash. And I went to the Division of Youth and Family Services here in California in Los Angeles. And I was able to give them the $3,000 in gift cards. And they accepted it and they gave them out at Christmas. I told them then, I said, I have money coming and I would like to donate so that the kids can get other stuff. And they said they couldn't take the money. And they said they couldn't take the money because they're not a nonprofit and they're government, And so then I was like, So like the true front line, I can't do anything for those kids unless it's through some other organization. Like I have a friend who has a store that kids go to shop for free, and it's the Book Emporium. And I realized, I was like, this can't be just about gift cards. The money can go to laptops for kids graduating from college or, all kinds of, help them with their first apartment, all that stuff. So I just realized I was giving to the front lines and sight unseen as to where it was going. And then got blocked by one of the biggest organizations. And I was just like, I need to do something that is really helpful and will help these kids, because when they're 18, the organization disappears and they're left to fend for themselves. So that's kind of why. And I named it Marvin Cares for Kids, because that's something that I was able to do for him, even though he died when he was 14.
Yeah. Well, his legacy continues on through you and through the work of this organization. And one thing that I said recently on this podcast is we have different people who have founded nonprofits or who have been involved in different advocacy work for years and years and years. But one thing that I love about nonprofits like yourself, who are just kind of dipping your toe in and getting started, is it will become what it's meant to be, right? Like some of these organizations that I've had on, it's like, oh, they've been doing the same work for 10 years, which is great. I think it's incredible. But your organization, because it's kind of in that newer stage and you already know so much because you've been doing it for so long. So it's like, all right, I already know what the needs are. I already know like the different organizations that we don't have to recreate the wheel. So I already know the different organizations that are doing things, but also you're going to be able to serve so many other people, because I think once it really big time launches, you're going to start seeing like other needs and be able to be there for these kids in so many different ways. It's incredible what you're doing. If you want to be a part of the revolution and support the work we're doing to uplift women's voices and their stories, please consider donating to our 501c3 nonprofit organization. Every single dollar goes right back into the work that we're doing and will allow us to tell even more stories of inspiring women and girls, to inspire and empower the next generation. Donate today at onegirlrevolution.com. That's the number onegirlrevolution.com.
The big core mission of Marvin Cares for Kids is for me to reach out to every single diversity program in television and film. If television production companies or networks have 10 or 12 different shows that are launching, I want them to commit one PA job on each show to a foster kid. Pledge one PA job on each show to a foster kid, either aging out of the system who's not going to go to college or graduating from college. And the same in the film department. And so and I've started making, I just recently I get invited to a lot of diversity programs with the networks and entertainment departments. And so I have all these different relationships with people, and it just takes me to say, okay, I've launched. Now we're going to start making you put your money where your mouth is. You say you really want diversity. You say you really want to make a difference behind the scenes. Here's an opportunity, So I don't want to be looked at as an employment company, and I also want them to excel. So I want to not only find that job, but also pair them with a mentor person to guide them through that experience, for the first year, so that they can at least have an outlet and someone to ask, is this right? Should I do this? What should I do? That kind of thing. So
I think the impact that that's going to have is just going to be world changing, Jacqui, because like you shared earlier, so many of these kids age out of the system. They don't have support. They don't even have a mentor or someone they can go to. And so they end up homeless. We've done a lot of work on a population that has been incarcerated. And so I know there's also like that whole thing. If people don't feel like they have a place to live or a support system, they often end up in that system, and then it's hard to get them out. Yeah. And so if you can just provide them with one opportunity, one season to work on this job and a mentor, I can only imagine the power that that's going to have to just transform the lives of these individuals, but also they're going to be able to be like you in so many different ways. I mean, maybe not totally following your footsteps, but the world became your oyster, and it just took one person. It just took one person to believe in you.
And I think we as individuals, whether you're a foster kid or not, we're our biggest fans and where our biggest obstacles. And I think if we can just unblock ourselves, there's nothing we can't do. The industry is so funny where when I first started, they're like, well, if you worked in TV, you can't work in film. And if you work in film, you can't work in TV. And if you work in reality, you can't work in scripted. I'm like, who said? Like, who made that rule? They were, when I was started, which is why I said part of the reason my mentors in school were like, you're crazy, don't do that. They were like, you'll never get a job in this town. You have to get a job outside of Los Angeles, work there, and then work your way back. And I'm like, what? I'm not leaving. I just got here. And so my first job was in LA. And it's like, you just have to, and I'm a very spiritual person. I mean, I didn't get here without the help of God, honestly. And I don't care if you believe or don't believe. It's like, all it matters is that I believe. And, the way I see it is like, I take one step and he carries me the rest of the way. And that's and I always tell people, even though I've had a crazy life, I always say, I've always gotten everything I've asked for, period, except the lotto.
That's all of us. We can't have everything, Jacqui. We can't have everything.
I know it. Yeah. So yeah, I've always asked for everything. And it just takes, it really, the power of words and the power of our mind is the two of those things together is what creates our reality, which is why you and I can experience the same exact thing in life, go through the same exact thing and view it completely differently, because of how we created the reality of it. And which leads you down a whole nother metaphysical world of, is reality real? If yours is different and mine is different, but yet we did the same exact thing, it's like, where does it come from? So I think kids, because when we're so young and we lose that light inside us, that innocence, because we lose innocence really young when you're in foster care system. You go through a lot of stuff that you shut out. I've shut out so much stuff that it's like you lose that innocence as a child, and it's nothing you'll ever gain back. You just have to either fill the void with something else, or you replace it with something else, or you just recognize it for what it is, leave it there, and move forward. And that's kind of what I did. I recognized what happened, whatever happened, but it didn't define me. And I'm constantly in a state of redefining my reality, even at 62 years old.
I think that's all of us. Life is full of many chapters, and we're always becoming who we were created to be. And life looks different in different chapters for sure, but we're becoming who we were meant to be. And I just can't wait to follow everything that you're going to continue to do in this next chapter and with Marvin Cares for Kids. I did want to just give a shout out to Wanda, because you told this story and it really resonated with me about your sweet friend, Wanda. We need to teach kids too about foster care and like children that are in the foster care system, because kids have so much power to really change the world, even from a young age, and just seeing people. And my mom used to love the musical South Pacific, where there's a song, "You've got to be taught before it's too late." That people who look different than you, are bad. And all this, that's kind of the whole mission of the song. But it's like, on the positive side, we have such a power with the next generation to teach our children or our children's children or our friends' kids, to teach them. And I think that's what's so cool about the work that you're doing and the work that all of us can do. We all can get involved to serve those children who are part of the foster care system. I know also there are organizations, Foster Together and National Angels are two organizations that come to mind, where they literally build community around foster families so that they can feel supported as well as these children. But Jacqui, I want to ask you, for people who are listening, how can we get involved in the work that you're doing, but also how can we help children or support children in the foster care system in our own communities?
Every city and town has a youth and family services. You could honestly reach out and find out when their Christmas party is, or they'll accept gift cards. Find out, you could do toy drives. I also helped a child advocacy legal aid group. So it was a law firm that provided legal aid for free to kids who were from the foster care system and who aged out of the system because they'd get in trouble. They'd get in trouble. They were homeless or whatever. And I would get calls from them throughout the year, and they would say, Jacqui, I have this one girl. She's a mom of two. She just moved into her apartment. She has like nothing in her place. Do you have anything? Can you help us get in? I'm like, sure. What do you need? And I got to the point that some of the things I was giving away, later in the year, so it's not just a holiday thing, but it gets you started. You could always check, even if it's check your local church, your local church, your local school, they all have foster kids. They're all there, so you can do that. You can collect among your friends, take clothes, all of that. It's gently used clothes.
Yes. Yeah. Or new clothes. Go to.
Yeah. It's like, there's so many ways. Just check your local area where you live. Foster kids are everywhere.
Yeah. I heard a story the other day, Jacqui, about a little kid who was in the foster care system that couldn't afford pajamas. And there was pajama day at school. And a pajama company heard about it, went to this school because there turned out to be a lot of different children in foster care and just other children who weren't able to afford new pajamas. And this pajama company went and outfitted the entire school. And so I'm like, if you're listening and you have a pajama company or whatever you have, like, we all can do something.
Yeah.
And like you said, there are children in the foster care system everywhere. And I would also like to say too, social media is such a powerful force. And so follow organizations that are doing this great work, reach out to people on Facebook. I know that I've done that even for homeless shelters and others to figure out, okay, what are things that I can do for my own local community? We all can do something. And so I just encourage everybody who's listening to get involved.
And you know what? Your friends who may not normally give to charities or whatever the case, the moment you start, they pick up where you leave off. Like, I cannot tell you, and I've probably been collecting gift cards, I don't know, 10 years maybe. And I cannot tell you how many times I get gift cards in the mail long before I post. It originally started in lieu of my birthday, because I was born Thanksgiving. And I would always post on my birthday for 3 weeks. I'm like, so don't send me birthday presents, send me gift cards for kids. And from that point until the Christmas parties would start, I would get these gift cards constantly in the mail, at my office. I mean, I had one girl bring me $3,000 and $20 Target gift cards. And I was like, okay. I'm like, I got it, and I'm like, and then I'm like, I gotta get rid of them. I gotta get rid of them. Waiting for IRS to come at me and like, girl, will you collect these things? Like, no, they're not mine. I'm just the vessel. It's like, they would start sending me gift cards before I even started asking for them. They're like, Jacqui, what's your address? We want to send you gift cards. I said, it's October. I'm like, I haven't. We ordered the gift cards already, so they're coming to you. And I'm like, oh my God, now I have to collect this year. So last year I didn't collect, and I felt really bad about it, but I was also moving. And it was just like the year before, it was just so hard to get rid of the money because people get lazy and they stop wanting to send me gift cards. They send me money. And so it's just like, oh, I got to get my stuff together so I can, do this properly.
Yeah. Well, you're going to be in a whole nother chapter with Marvin Cares for Kids. And I cannot wait to see that organization continue to grow and evolve. And we will, of course, cover it when you do your big launch. So we will have you back on and talk more about that great work. But before I let you go, Jacqui, I always end this podcast on 2 questions. So I'd like to ask you, you are a one girl revolution. That's why I wanted to have you on the podcast. You're changing the world every single day through your life. But who is a one girl revolution in your life? Who is a woman or girl that inspires you?
I have to say it was my mom. She died. she is my inspiration. She was mental illness, alcoholism, which seems to affect more people than not today, and they mask it in so many ways. And when I think of my mother, I am empathetic, I'm compassionate, I'm generous to a fault. But that was my mom. Like, she would give you 9 cents if she had a dime. It's just who she was when she was in her right mind. And I carry the best of her with me everywhere I go. And, I love her for all she was able to be and all she wasn't able to be. And so I say to people, even as foster kids, we may be foster kids, but we still had a parental unit that we love so much, and I think it's been years since she's gone. She's been gone almost 30 years. And all I can think now is she's still with me every day. And every time I accomplish something, I thank her for her gifts of life. My nephew got married recently on her birthday. And I thought about it and I was like, you gave us the greatest gift of all. Today, we were able to celebrate him because you gave us life. So, she's my inspiration. There's a lot of people out there, but my mom is it, hands down.
Jacqui, you're making me get choked up here because it's so beautiful. It's so powerful to think about our parents. And I think one gift is, as we get older, we can recognize that they're not perfect, right? Nobody's perfect. When you're a kid, you're like, oh, they weren't there for me in this way. But recognizing their humanity and saying, they struggled, but look at all this beauty that's come from their life and all the goodness that they instilled within us. And, even you sharing about the wedding and like looking at the whole legacy before us of our family.
Yeah. 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 It's beautiful.
It's beautiful. Well, before I let you go, I always end this podcast on this question because we're focused on women and girls. I'd like to ask you, if you could leave women and girls around the world with one message, what would it be?
If I could leave women and girls with one message, you are enough. You're enough. We spend so much of our time as women trying to prove ourselves, trying to have people see us, recognize us for all our contributions. And all it does is chip away at our inner peace, our mind, our security, our beauty. If we don't get the accolades that we think we deserve, or we don't get complimented, we're always looking for that thing. And it's like, you know what? No, you're enough. God made you perfectly imperfect, and that's enough. And I think we just need to find our inner self and love ourselves more and not look for love on the outside to make us feel better, because that's a void. And it changes the trajectory of our lives. If our dad doesn't love us, we're looking for a husband that becomes our father. If our mother doesn't love us, we're looking for that love from somebody else. If our husband doesn't love us, we're looking for, and it's like the love we have inside should be enough for us. So that's kind of where my head is.
Well, Jacqui, you are such a beacon of light, and I'm so grateful to know you and to have you on the podcast. Thank you so much for being on the One Girl Revolution podcast. And thank you for all the incredible work you do in this world.
It was fantastic talking to you today. Thank you for your kindness.
For more from One Girl Revolution, to listen to all of our podcast episodes, watch our Emmy-nominated documentary series, follow us on social media, donate to our nonprofit organization, and more, please visit onegirlrevolution.com. That's the number onegirlrevolution.com.